at their 3 sites that they lifted the charge for their drop-off of the yard waste, or of the tree branches. Olathe, Kansas, basically the same thing. They had the 1 week where they picked up. Olathe is, they do their own trash pickup, so they had their own crews pick that up. They also own and operate their own compost facility, so the residents can take tree branches down the facility to their compost facility all the time. And I also checked with Overland Park. They identified a specific area that got hit hard. They took their crew out for one entire week, Public Works crew. They picked up all the debris there. They used a park as a temporary storage and had CS carry, grind, and haul it. And they also had some of it at their Public Works facility. So it just gives you a little idea that most everyone did some limited pickup, plus they had drop-off sites with the exception of Overland Park. One of the things that as we've gone through this process, is trying to get to the point where we can educate the community a little bit more about tree issues.
Kurt, can I interrupt with a question?
Yes.
You said that Olathe does their own trash pickup?
Yes.
Where do they take their trash?
They,
Not this, but their trash.
the regular trash, they have a storage facility, and it gets shipped to Ham landfill.
Okay.
Topeka. But they, so we put that together, and we went to Stony Point last month where it really got hit hard, and we had a listing of tree contractors that individuals could use that are licensed with the UG. And then we also gave them, I believe 3 years ago when I was at this committee, I was telling about the surveying we did about the ash trees, which we had about 2,200 that could impact us if they would fall. So we went over all of that information too. So we're going to try to see if, and we're going to do another survey on that.
If I might jump in real quick, I think one of the things with Stony Point that Scott Paulson was particularly worried about was that they had trees still out there that had been damaged in the storm, and if they don't know that they need to take care of that those trees are going to die, then we have the next storm, and then now they might have trees on their house, or now they're out there trying to address the same problem, right? So we're trying to keep them from having to go through that experience again. That's, he wanted to educate them on that. That also helps us, right, in our emergency response and BPU's response and that kind of thing. So that was.
Did I hear you say something about having a short list of tree trimmers that they could access?
Yep, Scott went through a process of identifying 3 contractors that he believed were capable and competent and had all the resources that they could call, and possibly have the 3 bid against each other. And
yeah, and we got the listing from Phil at Business License of all the tree companies that are licensed and have all of the requirements for like the insurance and that.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, the BPU does a lot with tree trimming. With their service of what they do, we would be in a whole lot worse conditions when we have storms. I mean, they've got 3 contractors assisting, and they're trying to do a 3-year turnaround with all of the trees. And then, of course, when there is an emergency with tree branch getting in the line itself, they respond to that real quickly too. So Board of Public Utilities is a very important component of this helping out.
yeah, and can we jump back 1-2 slides? I think at the bottom there, one of the things, and we may talk about this later, but we haven't, like Kirk said, we have an ash tree inventory. We've already done that work, and we've got it populated in GIS, but can we take it a step further? How much time would it take if we hired some interns and worked with BPU and our arborists with the Parks Department? How can we inventory almost all trees, even on private property, just especially the areas where they could fall into the right-of-way or they could fall into the BPU system, and even assess their health, right? And then let the property owners know what they have and what the problems, what kind of challenges they might have, and then give them those resources, right, to help them take care of it and take a sort of a compassionate approach to codes enforcement ultimately, right? And so that's something that I think is a big long-term risk mitigation effort, and I think it would have great benefits to everybody involved. So we'll continue to work through that. So let's see, where we at? Storm policy. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here. Okay, so one of the outcomes, or the primary outcome of this is what's our protocol going forward, right? So on a more routine basis, sort of that daily business, you know, where we have a storm and you get a few branches falling, you get a couple of trees, you know, they're more routine things. The protocol is that, and the code is that property owners are responsible for trees, even in right-of-way. And now if one falls in the street, it's Public Works' responsibility to go through and clear the right-of-way. Get it up out so cars can travel through and first responders can get where they need to go. That's sort of the everyday policy, right? When we get into these bigger events, what's our policy going to be? And so with, after conversations with the county administrator and the mayor, we determined that we'll take it on a case-by-case approach. Staff will assess the situation within a 24 to 48-hour period, and then make a recommendation to the county administrator and the mayor on how we're going to handle it. And generally, it's going to be notify the public what the approach is going to be, give them a week to 2 weeks, and then we have a defined period of time, maybe 2 weeks, where people can get their debris out to the street, and we'll come by and pick it up in a very organized fashion. The longer it drags out, the more complications we have. And so if we can give them time to prepare, give them a couple of weeks, and then there's another couple of weeks where we're going to drop by and pick it up. And then they've got the other resources, drop-off locations and waste management out at the curb and those kinds of things. I feel like we can manage this a lot more effectively than we did this last year. Did I hit everything? Okay. So that's sort of the protocol going forward. So case by case, and we'll make those reports, those recommendations to the mayor and county administrator.
Commissioner Merkley, and then Johnson.
I would let you go, but this is good, and I don't want to take away from your recommendations or your final decision, but I just want to say what the elephant in the room is, which is that taking down a tree is really, really expensive. And for most of our residents, that's just $2,000 to take down a tree just isn't an option. I don't have a solution for that, and I don't expect you to, but I think there are probably some people who will watch this and say, why are you even talking about this if the trees are the residents' responsibility? And I think that's the reason we're talking about this, because we know that most residents don't just have $2,000 laying around to take down a tree. So that's why we're talking about this and trying to find the best way to help our residents, but also to spend taxpayer dollars wisely.
Absolutely.
The only thing I was going to add to that would be the importance of communication, getting the word out so that all persons, and so I assume that in this process, as we're putting our protocols in place, that we'll take that, or it already has been taken into consideration on how we get the word out to our constituency.
Yeah, it's hugely important. Communication, having the plan all the time, and then when an event happens, then it's easier. But that public education and public communication, public awareness is a big component of this, absolutely.
I'm going to do the devil's advocate thing here. I've got a nasty looking tree in my yard, and you tell me I should be doing something about that tree. And I'm looking at you going, and I'm getting that money where, as they say. And, you know, let's see, am I going to make the payments on my car, or am I going to have the tree cut down? And I think, you know what, I'm just going to wait and see what nature does. And then it lands, and partially out in the street, partially on whatever, maybe my neighbor's house, who knows. Then what? I mean, where am I in the middle of all that? What does that tell, you know? Because people are gonna take that way of looking at things, and so if my tree lands on the neighbor's house, you know, who's responsible? You know, because I didn't take action, etc., because I'd been told, or it lands on, it's big enough that it actually blows toward a BPU line, and takes out a whole pole and maybe a line, those sort of things. And so in your information that you give us to John Q. Public, I think maybe you might want to mention some of the outcomes that are possible to come from that. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because we would prefer not knowing and just pray it doesn't happen. But on the other hand, when it does, and then we go, oh darn, if I'd have known that, maybe I would have made an effort to do something about that. So I think you need to understand what their inaction means to those, for them and for those around them.
Thank you. And I'll just say to that point, Kirk and the gentleman from the BPU were specifically in that Stony Point neighborhood meeting for that purpose, and I really appreciated that. I attended that meeting, and I was appreciative of what you were trying to do there with that particular neighborhood. But continue.
Commissioner, there's an article already written up to address what you just said.
All right.
That will be coming out soon. I think for the sake of time, we covered the storm part of it, but we just wanted to let you know that we're also looking at public property tree planting and also more with the private sector tree planting. So I don't think some of the information is in the PowerPoint, but like I said, for the time's sake, it might take quite a while to go through all of that, unless anybody's got some questions. Basically did the same format as what we did with the storm, looking at other cities, looking at what we do, and then coming up with some recommendations that other cities are using.
Well, I think, Commissioner Kane, do you have anything at all to add? Or Mr. Groneman on this topic? I think the key is the communication piece and the planning piece, and you're working on both of those, and, you're setting a protocol for, it'll happen again. It's happened before, it'll happen again,
And we just wanted to say the Parks Department has been wonderful too, working with us on all of this. They're very instrumental in all that. And as a result of some of this, they are in the process of purchasing a big chipper. So we'll have a capacity of chipping up to a 15-inch diameter tree, which they're going to try to utilize on some of their paths.
So I think it'll be big in the response, because that's one of our weaknesses, is we take it to a drop-off and then we don't have any way to dispose of unless we contract that out. So that'll be big for a lot of those storms. We get into the bigger one, then we just have to have somebody come in and help us.
okay.
I just want to thank you again for the hard work that everybody did in Stony Point area, and Mr. Groneman, BPU was Johnny on the spot, and those guys were working so hard, and I mean, they were working a minimum of 12-hour days plus, and we appreciate how nice they were, and people, talking to them, running out in the street, hey, what's going to happen here, what's going on? And I want to tell you, you guys really did a wonderful job, and I want to thank our Public Works folks and BPU for working so well together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That's the end of that presentation, and we appreciate it. It's also the end of this meeting, and we will be adjourned. And Mr. Groneman, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. I'm good. Let's do it.
All right, we're going to dive right into the second half of our evening, which is the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee. I'll now call the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. I want to welcome everyone to the meeting. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the Standing Committee agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion. You'll have 3 minutes to state your comments. Everyone, please use the microphones for accurate recording purposes. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Markley.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Kane. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Next, we have the minutes from our January 29th meeting. Is there a motion for approval? There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those minutes have been approved. Our first item is a Bloomberg Public Art Grant for a downtown art project and market. I'll recognize Assistant County Administrator Melissa Sieben to discuss this item.
As you know, it is customary for us to come before you before we submit for a grant. I'm here tonight to request support from the Standing Committee for a collaboration of nonprofits and local players who are interested in going for this, what we're calling Farmers Market as Art Grant. We are working on location within our downtown to seat a farmers market pavilion, and it would be a space that could be used for multiple purposes. It would allow for performing arts as well as for the market itself and other events throughout the year, depending on what people would like to program in there. So we're really excited about this opportunity and incorporating other public art displays in and around the area as well. And more to follow on all of it, but that is what we're looking to do. And hopefully with some of our other partners finding the match. So it's not defined in the grant, so we will ask for as much as we think we can get and try to bring forward the most innovative idea possible for them to move to the second phase. So this is the phase one of several phases to receive this option of $1 million.
So just a couple questions. If we were successful, it would be up to $1 million. How many, I'm assuming the competition is wide.
Yes, it's in the U.S. this year.
Okay, cities of a certain size or any city or, okay.
Pretty much anyone who wants to apply. And what we do know from seeing the past winners of this competition is that it has to be, normally it's in areas that are struggling. And so we feel like our downtown is a candidate with some of the challenges we've had with getting the Healthy Campus started and different things. So we're hoping this could be a Kickstarter for further reinvestment into our downtown, and that we have a lot of great partners already working on healthy food options and a small farmers market that's been operating over here that would love more space to do a larger market with a lot of our local farmers as well. So we think there's a lot of options, and we're working with economic development as well on this grant, as Arts KC has stepped in and is going to be helping us figure out how to put forward a plan on programming the space and then sustainable art in our community going forward.
And there would be a match if we were successful?
Some portion of a match, yes. We're talking with downtown shareholders. We're talking with the folks from Arts KC. We have a few others that are interested that would likely help us with the match. But right now we have a deadline of the 19th of April to pull this all together. So we're trying to figure out what that is. But our match would be low.
And that's my last question. And that is, does it need to be fast-tracked or no?
It does not need to be fast-tracked because I believe this will end up on the commission prior to then. What I can tell you is that our match we're looking at more in kind. So things of streetscaping, things that we would want to do in our downtown anyway. So we would be looking at those as something that would go adjacent to it to help allow us to display the art. So I can definitely tell you we're looking along the Minnesota Avenue corridor, and in doing so, that provides us some opportunities to complete some work that we started in other parts of Minnesota.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Sorry to be ambiguous.
Motion to approve.
A motion and second have been made. Roll call.
Roll call. Philbrook. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you. Our second and final item is an update on motor vehicle registration customer service. And I'll let the team introduce themselves and proceed with the presentation.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Von Adgen. I'm the CFO, and we're happy to make this presentation on the improvements in the motor vehicle registration division. And who I have with me is our newly appointed County Treasurer and Director of Revenue, Rick McKessick. and then our Deputy Treasurer, Andrea Para. So, welcome them. I'm happy to take any questions throughout the presentation. Let's start out. I'm going to take the first few slides. So generally, why do we do motor vehicle registration? Well, as you know, it is mandated by the state, but part of their reason for putting it into law is that it improves the safety of car ownership. And I provided this pie graph that kind of gives you an idea of the distribution of the revenue. The total revenue that we collect annually, or at least for this year, is estimated to be $11.7 million. About 50, it's split 50-50 between city and county functions, and it's distributed amongst all of these various funds as displayed here. Now, over the past 6 years, we've done a community survey, which was presented. The preliminary results for 2018 were presented a few weeks ago, and some of the survey questions related to the county functions, right? So just to give you a reminder, the motor vehicle registration was identified as one of the top priorities to be focusing on amongst all of the districts except for 2 of them, or 3 of them, where it was ranked a little lower than #1. So now actually, so this seems to imply that there's a real need to make a lot of improvements, but we're going to show you some of the improvements we've been making over the past several years, and how, you know, just little by little we're working towards improving that perception from our customers. A couple more slides on the community survey. So one of the interesting things is this slide, as we explained before, it's a combination of what residents felt is most important compared with how satisfied they are. And so it's a ratio that they came up with. And as you can see, motor vehicle registration, it was deemed by 32% of the electorate to be most important, but then they expressed that 49% of them expressed that they were satisfied with the service. So even though by district it shows that it's the #1 top priority, it actually dropped to the 4th level if you combine those ratios together. Now, there have been some improvements over the past year. As you can see, motor vehicle registration, you know, we've done 3 surveys, one in 2014 and 16 and then in 18. And community or motor vehicle registration was ranked 38%, and then it jumped to 49% in terms of satisfaction. So we've really made some good improvements over the past year. Yeah. And then again, this is a graph that shows the 2018 survey, what services should be receiving the most attention or emphasis in the future 2 years. And motor vehicle registration is combined had 32%, whereas in 4 years earlier it was ranked 36%. So I mean, things are improving over the past few years. There's better satisfaction, perhaps, you know, less emphasis is placed, or the customers feel that things are improving generally and that they're satisfied with the service, but still we have a long way to go. And we're very committed to making improvements in this area. At this point, I'm going to pass on the presentation to Rick McKessick.
Good evening. In 2015, the Treasurer's Office began completing customer surveys, and so some of the facts that I'm going to present are based upon the results of those surveys. Since that period of time, there have been about 5,600 responses, and so I want to provide the information we've learned through those 5,600. This might be a little small to read, but these are the 4 questions that are requested or offered during the survey. The first one asks them to rate the check-in system. The second one asks them to rate customer service. The third one asks them to rate our knowledge. And the fourth one is overall, how would you rate your experience? The choices were poor, fair, good, better, or good, great, and excellent. And I'll point out that regarding our check-in system, the total responses are 92.4% favorable. And I provided the 17 and 18 numbers there in case you were curious about where the last 2 were. And you can see actually it was a little bit better in the last 2 years. Of course, this year only have 2 months worth. As far as our customer service, almost 94%. And then our knowledge was 96% and overall 90%. So I think that actually would surprise a lot of people when you hear the term motor vehicle, that repeatedly we have a 90% favorable rating. This is another view of the same information. It puts it in pie chart form. And you can see that we had 63% rated our check-in excellent. That's the big one. 71% extremely knowledgeable. 75% rated our customer service as excellent, and overall 62% as excellent. So that's the good. We get complaints too. One of the things that we have and we discuss in our office are red days. And a red day simply is the final 2 days of the month and the first 2 days of the month. As everyone knows, your registration expires at the end of the month. And it also would surprise no one to know that everybody waits until the last second to come in to pay their taxes. So the last 2 days and the first 2 days are always very high volume. It would probably not surprise you to find out that the red days make up a disproportionate share of the complaints. 37% of the complaints that come in occur during that 4-day period, where they only represent 20% of the days during a given month. So you can see where our biggest driver is when it comes to complaints. And this chart will sort of give you a feel for what they're complaining about. For me, although we have low staffing and wait time as 2 separate items, to me they're very close to one and the same. It stands to reason they're waiting because there's nobody available to help them. So for me, I group those 2 together. That represents 35% of our complaints. And if I look back in time, that's fairly consistent over the period since 2015 when these started.
Quick question before you go on. So this particular complaint topics pie chart relates to the overall, including those 4 nasty days? So it's the overall?
This is overall.
Okay, and I haven't looked ahead, but did you do one for just the 4 nasty days?
I don't believe we pulled that together, but if you would like it, we can see if we can try and pull that together for you. Maybe at least, maybe not the entire range, but at least
the highest percentage of...
a sample. Maybe we can look at 2017 and see where those complaints came in.
But might give us a little bit better idea of dealing with the last 2 and the first 2 days.
Right.
You know, other than just tell them don't do that.
And, well, yeah. And we'll talk, we do what we can to mitigate that.
Oh, I know you do.
A little bit about that. I am trying to process through this quickly, so
I understand.
Don't hesitate to stop me and ask the questions. But we will talk a little bit about that in just a moment. Check-in, what year was Austin Q brought in? 2014. is our queuing system, and it's been extremely popular and worked very well, and it's helped out the office significantly. The complaints that we have, that you see 21%, you're like, wow, that sounds kind of high. Mostly it works well. Once in a while we have a problem where it's not working right and we had to shut it down. And so complaints came in because it wasn't working. But the other big factor of that was people, we found out, and this was Andrew really who realized this, people were having problems based upon the customer survey. They were having problems figuring out where to click online to get in line. You can actually get in line by just going to the website, and people were having troubles figuring that out. And in September, a change was made to the website to try to clarify that. And since that point in time, that 21% is down to only 13%. So that kind of gives you a feel for how we're using this information once we get it, and what we're trying to do to continue to make the improvements. Customer service can often be a driver of training. We have a high turnover. Part of that is because it's a hard job. Part of it is because there's a lot of other great places in the unified government that our employees want to go work. I'm okay with that. If we're like the bench for the UG, that's fine with me. I support them going and trying to better their own careers, but that means we're in a constant state of trying to bring in new people, train them, and get them up to speed on what our expectations are from customer service. But we're trying to tackle those as well. Title work is one of the more time-consuming functions that we have in the office. We have a goal that if somebody comes into the office and they get in line, we want to be sure that they are served before we close for the day. The only way we can do that with the volume that we have is to shut down the title work in the afternoon, depending upon the workflow for that given day, and not take new title work, because they really do suck up a lot of time.
Rick, could I?
What this slide does is it presents, I'm sorry.
I mean, I've heard this cutting off title work for a number of years now, and I think it predates my time here, but goes all the way back to the purchase of the state motor vehicle processing system that frankly didn't work and slowed everything down. I mean, you know, we used to hear the horror stories of 7 hours at the motor vehicle department, and I know that maybe a lot of those bugs are worked out of the system, but are you saying that it could still potentially take an hour to process a title transaction?
It won't take an hour to process a title transaction. It will take, because of the number of titles that we have, it will take that long to get to that person to process the title work. And what we are trying to do is process as many of the titles that we can before the day ends. So if we've got a 2-hour wait at 3 o'clock, we probably will be shutting down our titles, because when we take the titles, it pushes the entire timeline.
So you're shutting down the line for titles at 3.
Line for titles.
So if I'm in line at 3 o'clock.
Anyone who is in line with a ticket will be served before we close that day.
And I might be there till closing.
You might be.
Not because the transaction took so long.
Because the line was out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that? What this graph illustrates, at a given point in time, the managing staff of the office look at what the queue currently has in line, considers the wait which is established through our queuing system, which takes into the account the number of people that are actually working on the line that day. And they determine, okay, we are going to cut off title work today, starting at 3:30. Now, if somebody comes in with a renewal at 4, they can still get in line. They'll still get served, but before we close for the day. They might be waiting till 5, but they'll still get served by the end of the day. What this graph provides is the average time that the title work was cut off during the day. Some days we don't have to hardly cut it off at all. It just depends upon the workflow. And I haven't been there long, but outside of the 4 days wrapped around the end of the month, there is not a lot of rhyme or reason why it gets busy one day and not. There have been several days I was like, what happened today? And then the next day it was like, nothing. It's really confusing. But that's what this slide presents. This slide presents the renewals. We talked about titles in the last slide. This is for renewals. Renewals may be done through the mail, they may be done in the office, and they may now be done online. And what this slide is presenting is the percentages of our breakdown. We would love for that blue line to drop and drop and drop. And we'd love for the green line to keep going up and up and up, because the green line is basically much less labor intensive. And we want to try and do everything that we can to try to encourage the online renewals. And Andrea and I are working through ideas, having discussions, what we can do. I think it's a matter of educating the public to let them know that they can just do this. And hopefully we can get that word out. There is actually a limitation to how much progress we can do on this because of the requirements with regard to having insurance, and some people, because of how they buy their insurance and their insurance company, it's not updated in the system, which is a requirement for online. So we can't really do much about those individuals, but for those that we can, we want to try to encourage the online renewals as much as possible. I think I kind of talked about some of these. The Awesome Queue, we did actually just have an upgrade to that system, which allowed for bilingual sign-in. Before it was just English only. Now they can choose their language to sign in, so that's an upgrade. The survey, it's everything we've been talking about here. The red days, we try to discourage and limit time off during the red days. We understand things come up, but we try to prevent that from as much as we can. Simply put, the more people working, the more we can get through. We have a formal two-week training period. We just had a few people finish that up last week, and now they're on the line today for the first time on their own. We also have an annual training every Columbus Day, which the office gets together, tries to do various training as well as team building type things. We have the memo meetings, which are each month. In each office, we have the meeting, and at that meeting, we start before the day starts, where we basically cover everything that needs to be discussed, whether it's a clarification of rules or a corrective action or just an informative action of something coming down the line, whatever it is that we might need to talk about. And all those sort of drive to making sure we have staff as trained and prepared as possible, so that they are knowledgeable, they are giving good answers and doing their work as air-free as possible, which is also the last thing. Ship reports, ship statements, see how I'm progressing. It gives feedback to the staff to let them know how well they are doing their work, as far as how many errors they may have. If there's a a noted item that they're not doing on a repetitive nature, as opposed to just a one-off, they just didn't do it that time, that allows for corrective action to be taken there. And then finally, morale boosting. It stands to reason the happier employees are, the better that the smile they can put on their face for the public. And so we do try to do everything we can with having birthday parties and celebrations and spirit weeks and all different kinds of stuff there. So that's what we have there. I'm going to let Andrea discuss this slide.
Hello, good evening. This is just a recap on most of the fees that customers will see throughout different business transactions. First thing is something we implemented in 2014, which is the $5 per vehicle renewal fee. That is assessed at both offices, in office only. If it's by mail, we will waive the fee, and anything online, they would not be assessed the $5 fee. There are a few fees for processing online renewals, such as the e-check fee. It's a set fee of $1.25. Or if they are going to process with a debit or credit card, they will be charged 2.5% of their total. That would be included also in person if they're using a debit or credit card as well.
So that's another reason why somebody might want to renew online. It's actually has the potential to be cheaper because you aren't charged that fee when you walk in. So we also want to talk about what can be done in addition to what we've already been doing. I've only been in the office for a couple of months, so I still have a lot I need to learn and pick up on. And I think Andrea and I have a good working relationship, and I think we have some ideas that we've already started bouncing around. Andrea herself has only been in her position since September.
September, yes.
So there's a really big difference in leadership right now in the office, and I think we're going to bring some new ideas to the table. Not really in a position to discuss those yet, but well, it's not a secret. They just haven't been formally vetted as they should be.
Okay, we'll wait.
A couple of the things that are up here, if we really want to talk about the main driver of our complaints, the main driver of our complaints is the wait time. And I did note when I went through some of the budgeting information that there are some unfunded positions in motor vehicle. I don't know why they're unfunded. I don't know when they were unfunded or what the purpose is. But as we stated before, we do have a lot of turnover, and we do have a lot of situations where we don't have bodies in place. We have people that are on FMLA. We have people that leave and then go into other places for the unified government. I'm sure you all know when somebody leaves, you're probably looking at a minimum by the time you put the position out, do your interviews, get the hiring, get them 2 weeks of training, probably 2 months is my guess. So when we lose one person, we're down, a seat is empty for 2 months before we can get them. And I just explained, we had 3 people that we just brought on. So prior to that, we were down 3 people, and actually in the short time I've been there, we've had 5 new people start. So if we wanted to do something, for me, that's one place we could talk. Yes, Commissioner? We have, on what was provided to me, the unfunded vacancies we have are 5 full-time and 1 part-time. One of those 5 is on the Treasury side, full disclosure. That's the other side of the operation. But that's what I have from what was provided to me. And I believe we are at 37 and a half. Is that the right number?
That is correct.
Treasury and motor vehicle combined, we're at 37 and a half.
Do you have any data that will tell us what kind of impact those 4.5 persons will make in terms of the turnaround time and other points.
I haven't put any pen to paper to do the math. I'm not here asking for that at this time. I'm just providing that as a potential solution if the priority is there. And the only reason I brought it up is because I saw what the results were, the community survey. If they're talking about that, I know where the complaints are. They're in wait time and staffing. And so that's why I put it in there. Nothing's being requested today.
And I understand, and I guess I think I'm speaking on behalf of this commission. We are pretty much a data-driven commission, and the more information and data that you give us, the more we dive into it and digest it. So
I will be more than happy if we bring something for the commission to consider in a formal presentation. I will be more than happy to bring some hard stats that we can provide that.
So in the middle of that, you can let us know how much one FTE is worth in money when you're doing that.
Sure.
Well, I would say on average with benefits, it's around 45 to 50,000 a year.
45 to 50 per year?
With benefits and
Okay.
pension.
Thanks, Kathleen.
The next bullet point is consolidation of offices to one location. This was an idea that was brought about before my tenure began, and I don't feel that I fully encompass what all the discussion is, but I think there was some discussion with relation to the court system and actually relocating Treasury office completely. But I think that's a genesis of a discussion that may or may not go somewhere. And I know that we went over to Johnson County to examine their operations, and I looked at how they were doing things and noted that they're doing some things a little bit differently than we do. Maybe there's some merit to it. Maybe it doesn't work right for us. But that visit just happened 2 weeks ago, and so a lot of ideas that are floating around. But right now there are balloons that we're just shooting up before we start trying to shoot them down and see where it goes. But I know that was one discussion. And building logistics of the annex, there's just a couple of things there. Just the customer service trying to make the parking out there, it's kind of an issue because the entrance to our operation is on the lower level, and there's like 3 spots there, or very few spots with a few handicap. So I've been talking with building and logistics and some changes with regards to how the parking is going to be run, as well as better access from the upper lot to the lower lot. We can't just create more lots down there, but we can make it a better access so that people aren't basically walking through a bunch of tree roots sticking up through the dirt, which is what it is right now. And John Kelly's working on getting that done this year. So that was that bullet point, and I'll let Andrea address the last one.
They refer to it as the pay it, I believe, Treasury. We've all been through that process for making real estate payments. It's on hold as of now, but the Kansas Department of Revenue is issuing a similar version for renewals online. It was supposed to go live on February 5th. Due to reporting issues, they put that on hold till the 12th and is now indefinitely on hold. As far as I understand, it's not going to communicate with our pay it. So that system would be something we would want to reach out to KDOR to merge into the Wyandotte County app so they can do their real estate, personal property, all taxes within one app. But all we have right now is that it's supposed to be rolled out to all 105 counties, but it's on hold indefinitely.
So that's basically what we brought for you tonight. If you have any other questions.
Commissioner Bynum?
I have a couple questions. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the work that you do, because it's thankless work. And I don't know if you know that I'm an old motor vehicle title clerk and supervisor in that department, so I feel you every day. and I'm well familiar with your last 2 days and your first 2 days. And I want to have a conversation offline about the wait time thing, because it still kind of bothers me. But the first question I have is your very first slide. And it's not really why you're here tonight, but I just want to make sure I understand the dollars.
This one, or?
The dollar figures. Your slide says purpose of motor vehicle registration. So, you talk about 11.7 million annual, and are you saying that that is the motor vehicle registration fees collected, or the personal property tax fees, or a combined total of both?
No, that's the motor vehicle.
That's just motor vehicle fees?
Yeah, commercial and.
It's the taxes.
Yeah, it's the taxes.
It's not just the fee,
Okay.
no.
And the reason I was asking is because the motor vehicle fee, if I'm not mistaken, does not the bulk of that go to Topeka? We don't keep that money.
This is the portion that we retain.
We do keep a portion of fees. There are a number of fees, as most people realize, and there's a portion of it that we retain.
It stays local.
But our portion is small, and I think Kathleen's slide is presenting the taxes,
That's what I
not
want
the
to know.
fees.
Okay.
That's the.
This is the,
The fees that we
the-
receive are very small.
okay. So these are the taxes people pay on their vehicles
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what.
in Wyandotte County that total 11.7 million. Do we know how many automobiles and commercial trucks and et cetera that represents?
We can look at that.
Just curious.
I have,
We can get that
Yeah,
for
we-
you.
we've got that.
Okay.
I've got that.
I just wanted,
The other-
from the beginning, I just wanted that clarified, because those are two different fees, and one of them stays here and one of them goes somewhere
Right,
else.
right. And I would like to thank you for your statement about me, but it really is more for the staff.
It is for you and the staff.
They have a very, very tough job. They're dealing with people who generally don't want to be there, generally don't want to give you the money that they have to give you. And when they walk out, all they've gotten is the ability to quietly own what they already own.
I agree.
And it can be tough for them. So they've got tough.
I just wanted you to know I appreciate it.
Sure.
Anything else from commissioners?
Other than, thank you, I'm happy you're doing it and I'm not.
This is an item for information only. You know, customer service has been a focus of this commission as one of our goals county-wide, but it's great to hear an update in a department where you guys are making some progress, so we appreciate it. Thank you very much. And that was our final item. That concludes our meeting. Thank you for your attendance, and we are adjourned.